She's not who you think she is, not because she tricked you, but because you tricked yourself. The lie? It started when you mistook harmony for stillness, beauty for order, love for relief. You didn't want her. You wanted a counterweight to your chaos. You wanted calm in the form of a woman. But Heraclitus would spit on that illusion. He wrote, "It is in conflict that things find their purpose, not in peace." Still, you begged for her to be peace. You begged her not to change, to stay sweet, predictable, comforting. But here's the brutal truth. Change is the foundation of everything, including her. Heraclitus didn't see life as something stable. He called it fire, eternal, self-transforming. This world, the same for all, no god nor man has made, but it always was, is, and will be. An ever-living fire, kindling in measures and going out in measures. So let me ask you, what is beauty, if not the moment the fire dances instead of devours? And what is a beautiful woman, if not fire, wearing grace? The flame doesn't scream at you. It smiles. Soft eyes. Gentle voice. Skin that stills your breath. And you fall for it. You believe it will stay that way. But Heraclitus warned, all is flux, nothing stays still. She is not the same woman you met last year, not the same as last month, not even the same as last night. Her beauty remains, yes, but its form, its flavor, the way it shines, it shifts like flame, second by second. And you thought you could love her as a thing, as a fixed, unchanging reward. But nothing is fixed. Not her, not you, not love. And that's why you suffer. Not because she betrayed you, but because the version of her you invented couldn't survive reality. Heraclitus says, the road up and the road down are the same. The same beauty that once lifted you, now unravels you. She used to make you feel invincible. Now you feel small, shrinking in her presence. But it's not her that made you small. It's you. You who never understood what you were actually holding. You thought beauty was the finish line, that once you won her, the work was over. But Heraclitus wrote, war is the father of all and king of all. If war governs the stars, do you really believe the most magnetic woman you've ever met exists without a storm behind her smile? Her chaos. It's not personal, it's elemental. She isn't fighting you. She's following the same law that governs oceans and atoms. Constant transformation. Heraclitus saw it. He felt it. He knew every moment of stillness hides tension waiting to break. So he warned us. Hidden connections are stronger than obvious ones. Meaning, what she says isn't always what she means. What she shows isn't always what she holds. And you, the man dreaming of peace. You're always the last to know, because you didn't study fire. You just fell into it. That's why it hurts. Not because women are dangerous, but because you pretended they weren't elemental. You reduced her to comfort. But she is chaos, wrapped in skin. You idolized her image and ignored her nature. Heraclitus wrote, nature loves to hide. And behind the beauty you chase is not safety. It's the rhythm of the universe itself. Conflict, contradiction, renewal, fire. And if you don't approach it with reverence, it will consume you. You believed in stillness, because stillness feels safe. She smiled once, and you froze that moment in your mind like a holy photograph. She touched you, and your soul built a cathedral around the gesture. You mistook a moment for a monument. But Heraclitus, whose words were forged in fire, would laugh at your mistake. You cannot step into the same river twice, he said, for fresh waters are ever flowing in upon you. But you kept trying, didn't you? You kept stepping into her, expecting the same warmth, the same kindness, the same her you first fell for. But she'd already flowed downstream. You see, Heraclitus wasn't writing poetry. He was describing the architecture of reality, perpetual becoming. She is not a static being. She's a process, a living contradiction of light and shadow. One day she nurtures you, The next, she withdraws. And you call it mood swings. You call it drama. But what you're actually witnessing is the law you tried to ignore. Everything changes. Nothing remains still. And that law applies to you too, the confident man you were, now crawling for reassurance. You once saw her beauty as a gift. Now it feels like a leash. Why? Because you bet everything on the lie that something divine could be tamed. That beauty could be predictable. But Heraclitus said, the most beautiful order of the world is still a random gathering of things, meaningless to man. In other words, even the most radiant woman may not mean what you think she means. Even the most perfect feeling may be nothing more than a fleeting pattern. But you didn't want to believe that, because if her love can change, then what does that say about yours? If her touch was a passing moment, not a vow, then what does that say about your need for her? You wanted her to be the cure, the anchor, the thing that made your chaos manageable. But Heraclitus warned, the only constant is change. So now, when she pulls away, when she grows silent, when her eyes stop reflecting your worth, you feel lost. Not because she changed, but because you believed she never would. And Heraclitus? He doesn't offer you comfort here. He presses the blade deeper. Opposition brings concord. Out of discord comes the fairest harmony. Translation: what feels like chaos right now may not be destruction. It may be revelation. You're seeing her as she is, not as you fantasized. And yes, it hurts. But in that raw exposure, there's power. Because now, finally, you can keep chasing the image of her you invented, forever walking into a river that's no longer there. Or you can evolve. You can become like the fire Heraclitus worshipped, self-renewing, clear-eyed, unpossessed. But to do that, you've got to let go of your addiction to the fixed. You've got to stop expecting beauty to mean permanence. Real love, when it's authentic, isn't safe. It's not predictable. It doesn't hand you a script and stick to it. Real love transforms. And transformation is never gentle. The beautiful woman you crave. She's not your piece. She's your mirror. And if you don't like what you see in her reflection, it's not her face you should blame. It's your fear. Fear of becoming what you were always meant to be, a man forged in fire, not paralyzed by it. You keep asking, why did she change? But Heraclitus would ask, why did you expect her not to? The very nature of life, he said, is not stillness but struggle, not peace but polarity, not permanence but fire and motion. And if you keep interpreting beauty as a promise, you'll suffer every time the flame flickers in a direction you didn't predict. You weren't betrayed by her. You were betrayed by your resistance to truth. Heraclitus taught that behind everything is the logos, a hidden order that governs the dance of opposites. It's not emotional, it's not moral, it's not interested in your plans, it just is. Though this logos is eternal, he wrote, men are ever unable to understand it. That's where you slipped. You looked at her and thought you saw truth. But what you really saw was your projection, your longing, your loneliness painted onto a woman's smile. You didn't fall in love with her. You fell in love with your idea of her. So when she changed, when she pulled away, you called it chaos. But Heraclitus would say, all things come into being through opposition. What you call chaos is just your illusion finally breaking. It was never the world that betrayed you. It was your refusal to see how the world works. You expected her to stay loyal to a version of herself that never really existed. Not because she's cruel, but because she's alive. And to be alive is to move. You thought the truth was in her smile, in her words, in her touch. But Heraclitus says the real truth is hidden. The hidden harmony is stronger than the obvious one. What does that mean? It means beneath her beauty is motion. Beneath her affection is fluctuation. Beneath her love is a storm. Just like the storm that's buried inside you. The difference? She flows with it. You fight it. You demand clarity in a cosmos built on rhythm. You want guarantees from a universe that owes you none. And it's not just about her. It's about everything. Because the second you attach your value to something outside yourself, her attention, her affection, her approval, you become a man enslaved to wind and fire. Heraclitus warned, "To the soul belongs a logos which increases itself." So what does that mean for you? It means your soul can grow, but only if you stop outsourcing your worth. Only if you stop begging her to stay the same, so you don't have to. Because here's the harsh truth. She was never meant to be your home. She was meant to be your flame, a reflection of the world itself. Beautiful, mysterious, uncontrollable. Yes, you can love her. You can dance with her fire. But the moment you try to own it, to freeze it, to possess it, you start to burn. And the burn isn't punishment. It's revelation. You're not being destroyed. You're being shown something. Shown the true nature of reality. And now you stand at a crossroads. You either evolve with the current, or you drown in your resistance to it. You accept the logos, or you keep shouting at the storm. Heraclitus didn't offer comfort. He offered truth. And truth doesn't hold your hand. It holds up a mirror. Right now, that mirror is her. Not the woman she was, not the woman you wanted her to be, but the woman she is, right now. Changing, wild, unconcerned with your expectations. And if that terrifies you, then maybe the real problem was never her chaos. Maybe it was your addiction to control. Because Heraclitus didn't worship stability. He worshipped fire, not just the physical flame, but fire as a principle, as judgment, as purifier. All things are in exchange for fire, he wrote, and fire for all things, just as goods for gold, and gold for goods. In his eyes, fire was not destruction, it was truth. And the woman you've been obsessing over? She is fire, not metaphorically, elementally. She burns away your illusions, your fantasies, your performative confidence. She doesn't break you, she reveals you. That's the part most men miss. They think winning her heart is the end, that it means they've arrived, that they're enough now. But Heraclitus would say no. That moment isn't a reward, it's a furnace. Because the closer you stand to her, the more your cracks begin to show. If you haven't done the inner work, if your masculinity is built on performance instead of principle, then yes, she will burn you alive. But not because she's cruel, because fire judges everything it touches. Heraclitus wrote, "The people must fight for the law as if for the city wall." What law? Your own internal code, your boundaries, your values, your direction. If you don't defend that, if you let her become your compass, your law, your sun, you walk into the fire unarmed, and then you call it heartbreak. But the truth? It was self-inflicted. You burned yourself, trying to become what you thought she wanted. See the trap now? You chased her to feel powerful, but power borrowed through beauty is weakness. She didn't make you feel like a man. You made her the source of your masculinity. And when she pulled back, she took your identity with her. But here's what Heraclitus would say. Everything flows. You didn't lose her. You lost the version of yourself that couldn't survive without her. And maybe that version needed to die. Because you were never meant to be the man who crumbles when her mood shifts. You were meant to be the man who understands, of course it shifts. Everything does. Heraclitus didn't fear change. He revered it. He knew true strength comes, not from resisting chaos, but from standing firm within it. Fire doesn't fear the wind, it dances with it. You can keep reacting, pleading, walking on eggshells, apologizing for taking up space. Or you can remember who you were before she walked in, before the fire, before the obsession. You can rebuild, not into a man she approves of, but into a man fire cannot shame. A man forged by logos, not by longing. Because Heraclitus didn't promise you safety. He promised you clarity. He knew that the man who can stand in chaos without needing to fix it becomes untouchable. Not cold, not closed off, just rooted. Rooted like fire is rooted in its own nature, consuming, refining, alive. So look at her again. Not as your peace, not as your savior, not as your enemy. Look at her as your test. The storm isn't her. The storm is your dependence. And when that dies, you won't just stop burning, you'll start becoming. If you've made it this far, then some part of you is done suffering. Some part of you has realized the answer isn't in her changing. It's in you awakening. Heraclitus didn't write for cowards. He didn't write lullabies for the heartbroken. He handed you a sword and said, "Walk into the fire." Why? Because fire, to Heraclitus, wasn't to be feared, it was something to become. The soul is its own source of increase. You hear that? It means no woman, no relationship, no kiss or compliment or phone call can grow you. Only the confrontation with chaos can, and you've met your chaos. She had a name. She had eyes that made the world go silent. She had a voice that bent your pulse, but she also had moods that gutted your calm, silences that rewired your mind. And now, finally, you understand. It was never about her. It was about what her presence awakened in you. The craving for validation, the fear of being invisible, the desperation to be chosen. That's the raw truth Heraclitus would demand you face. You weren't in love with her. You were in love with the version of yourself that only existed when she smiled at you. But what if that version wasn't even real? What if the fire that burned you was the only thing honest in your entire performance? Heraclitus taught that fire is the origin of all things, and that everything returns to it. Fire lives in the death of air, and air lives in the death of fire. Opposites feed each other, so when your peace collapsed and her distance ignited your unraveling, something in you didn't die, it transformed. The man who begged for comfort? He had to go, so that the man who thrives in clarity could emerge. Heraclitus would call that harmony through conflict. You've been calling it heartbreak, but it's birth. She is not your enemy. She's the flame that revealed your shape. And once you truly see her, not as savior, not as demon, but as a living, breathing expression of nature itself, you can finally let her flow. Because you no longer need her to be your anchor. You've become your own. That's what it means to become fire. You stop negotiating your truth to buy comfort. You stop shifting your identity to match someone else's approval. You stop treating affection like a drug and start seeing it for what it is. A gift. Welcome, but not required. You stand in your own heat. Not to win her back, but to burn away what was never really you. And what remains after the fire? Unshakable. This is the man Heraclitus was writing for. The one who doesn't run from a woman's chaos, but sees it as a reflection of his own power. Not something to fear, but something to understand. Because once you stop chasing stillness in her, you begin to create stillness in yourself. Not the stillness of numbness, the stillness of being centered. The kind of stillness that flames have when they know exactly what they are. And here's the cold truth. Most men never get here. Most men spend their lives trying to turn wild rivers into swimming pools, goddesses into house pets, chaos into calendar appointments. But the few who embrace Heraclitus's wisdom, who walk into fire without flinching, they become something else entirely. They become men whose value doesn't rise and fall with someone else's attention. Men who are neither hardened nor hysterical, just present, grounded, dangerous in the calmest way possible. Because once you become fire, she can no longer burn you. She can only reveal your glow. You've stared into the flame long enough. Now the question is simple. Will you let it forge you? Or will you stagger back into the darkness, still clinging to the illusions that burned you? Heraclitus didn't preach despair. He preached transformation. He told us, the thunderbolt steers all things. Meaning, force, conflict, energy, these aren't threats. They're the secret architects of creation. If a woman's chaos has shattered you, let that thunderbolt guide you too. Let it break every weak foundation you built your identity on, so something unshakable can rise in its place. Start here. Reclaim sovereignty over your mind. Stop interpreting her silence as a verdict on your worth. Your value existed before she arrived, and it will still exist after she leaves. A man's character is his fate. So strengthen character. Audit your habits, discipline your impulses, finish what you start, and guard your word like it's gold. Character is the only currency that doesn't lose value when beauty drifts, neither one needing to devour the other to stay bright. In that moment, you'll finally know freedom. Not from women, but from the illusions about them that used to rule you. If this message lit a spark in the ashes of your old beliefs, fuel the blaze. Share it with a brother who's lost in the flames. Subscribe for truths we refuse to sugarcoat. Support the channel through the link in the description. Stand tall, burn clear, and never again mistake chaos for catastrophe.